Hi everyone, we're gonna get started now. And some people might be a little bit late, but that's totally okay. Um, so welcome to the Industry Insider presentation, Networking for Beginners. I'm not sure if any of you attended Carly or I's sessions last semester or a little bit in this semester, or if any of the other industry insiders you attended their sessions. But if you did, welcome back. If you didn't, no worries. We're gonna cover pretty much anything and everything that you need to know about networking. A little bit about myself is that I'm a senior, so I'll be graduating in a month, which is pretty crazy. I'm a law history and culture major with an education minor. And last summer, I interned at Inner City Arts, a nonprofit organization here in Los Angeles. And I actually know what I'm doing after graduation. I'm joining the Teach for America Corps here in Los Angeles. So if you have any questions about that, we can get to that after.
And I'm Carly. I'm also a senior graduating in a month. I'm an international relations and global business major, and I have a minor in consumer behavior. I was in charge of our accounting, finance, and consulting sessions last semester. So if any of you guys are coming from those, it's good to see you again. I was a business development consulting intern at RSM last summer, and currently I'm working in the private equity branch of a law firm in Century City. So any questions about those two industries I can take afterwards, but yeah, let's get into it. Peyton's going to start us off. So thank you all for coming.
Alrighty. Um, okay. Thanks, Carly. So we're just gonna go over how the session's gonna work. It's gonna be an hour, but we're gonna try and save as much time as we can at the end for questions, because me and Carly both feel that like the personal questions you guys have are probably the most beneficial for you, and we want to make time for that. So not to rush through this stuff, but yeah. So we're gonna kind of define networking, get into the three P's of networking and the best practices to use when networking, um, how to network, and then I think probably one of the best things to know is questions to ask when networking. I always um, would struggle with this in the beginning, so I think it's good to have some questions lined up. And we can definitely give you some tips and suggestions on that. And then, like I said, we'll open it up for a question and answer session at the end. So to introduce what is networking, a pretty standard definition of networking would be the exchange of information and ideas among people with common profession or special interest, usually in an informal social setting. So networking is not like an interview, it's like the precursor to an interview. It doesn't even mean that it's going to lead to an interview, or it doesn't have to do anything with an interview or a job necessarily. It's kind of just like making friends in a way with someone and seeing like, if your interests align and like kind of where that could take you. Um, I've networked at a Pilates studio before, at a coffee shop. There's no like, on the internet, on LinkedIn, things like that. So there's no um place or setting that is like appropriate or inappropriate, I guess you could say, for networking. It's kind of an informal thing. So yeah. All right, so a little quiz for you guys to make it a little bit more interactive. A question that I have for all of you, you can either unmute or type it in the chat. But for every one person who was hired via an online application, how many were hired via referral? If anyone has any guesses. Anybody want to take a guess? All right, I'll just tell you. Um, so for
Okay.
every one person, oh, did someone try and talk?
Yeah, LOL. Hello. I was just gonna like five, six.
Okay. Well, the correct answer is 12, which is honestly quite a few. And that was a pretty shocking number for me. It was about double of what, who's that? Michael? Of what you said. So, yeah. So referrals are great. All right. Now we're getting into the three P's of networking. First is purpose, and then we go into people, and then we go into process. Um, so the purpose of networking is learning, building connections, job hunting, and gathering information. So when you're, networking online, what does that really look like? I mean, in terms of LinkedIn, you're kind of just learning about a person. Maybe you're connecting with them. That could be following them or, clicking the connection button. Or you could be seeing where they worked or have worked in the past, something like that, and kind of just gathering information, and when you're talking to, or and if you're in person, when you're talking to someone, you're kind of just seeing what the purpose of that conversation might be. And that doesn't really entail much besides just kind of learning and gathering some basic information about them and their work experience and their process. And that kind of takes us into process, um, which is the next P of networking. So this is kind of how you can like go about networking. I think some people prefer networking in person. Some people prefer, doing it online because this allows you to kind of, expand your horizons and you don't have to maybe feel like you have to dress business casual if you're in person or something. In LinkedIn, you could be in your sweats. I don't know. Um, yeah, and again, networking doesn't, it can be super informal. It can be with your friends, it can be with your family members. Um, if your family, if you have a family member, maybe a distant cousin or something who's interested in the same field as you are, that can still be considered networking and they can help you in your process. I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with cold emailing, but this is a process of finding someone who you either are interested in their field or interested in the place that they worked or, something on their resume or whatever kind of sparked your interest. And you kind of just go out on a whim and say, hi, I'm Peyton. I'm interested in the field of education. And I saw that you have worked at the, whatever school. And can you tell me more about it? That is a cold email. You were not necessarily like referred to them or made really a connection with them prior. So if you have any questions about cold emailing, Carly and I can take those in the Q&A after. Was there a slide after that? The place, maybe? People? Oh, people, yes. Sorry. Carly's doing the slides for me. So thank you, Carly. Um, So for people, you're looking at different things when you're looking at people and networking. It's not just like where they worked, it's a lot more than that. So the industry that they worked in, the role that they had in that industry, because, if you straight out of graduation, you're probably not going to be at a managerial or, CEO level of job. So you want to make sure if you're talking to someone there that maybe you get referred to someone who's a little bit lower, who can kind of guide you through the steps of working your way up. Um, eventually. And you also, in terms of people, need to be looking at the company, what those companies' values are. If you're an international student, what that looks like for in terms of the company hiring you. Things are different for that. And like I said, level is really important, like your skill level. Some roles in some companies don't hire students straight out of college. Some require maybe a master's or some sort of certifications or things like that. So these are all really important things to keep in mind when talking to someone, and can kind of lead you into questions to ask them. So, and I think we'll get into that in a little bit. Okay, so in terms of networking at USC, I'm sure a lot of you know that networking at USC is incredible. If you haven't done that, which I wish I did that more in my past years at USC, looking back as a senior, and now with Handshake, the new platform that we are using for jobs and internships and all of that kind of stuff. It's very, very easy to use. I know it's new. It was new for all of us, even who work at the Career Center. So I'm kind of going to show you on this slide, like what an easy way to navigate Handshake is if you've never used it or got on it and then got scared or something. Um, so you can open it up and there's actually a category here that says networking. So it's different from things like the career fair, more like guidance and resources for maybe like your resume or something like that. This is just a separate tab for networking where social events, where they hold social events that people can help grow your professional network, which is so, so important. I think that even, people like your parents, your grandparents, older people that your professors still continuously network because it's not something that ever ends, no matter like how old you are and your career paths, whatever. Um, so we can go to the next slide. So once you click on that, it will come up with a bunch of different events. And as you can see, there's a bunch of different kinds of events. So like, here we have resume reviews and mock interviews. Here we have Dornsife recruiter panel. So like it's a very wide range depending on what your career interests are because for instance something like a Viterbi engineer and science thing would not really interest me, but maybe that really would interest you. So, you can pick your poison with what you guys want to choose, but you get a wide variety here. And I think that if you don't know where to start with networking, this is literally right at your fingertips and offered to you by our school. So you should definitely take a hold of that. Um, okay, and then networking outside of USC. This is also super fun because sometimes when you network outside of USC, oh, Carly, are you supposed to do this? Sorry. I'll just give a little story time while I was talking about this anyways, because I think it's fun. Um, when I network outside of USC, a lot of the time I still find like connections to USC, especially when networking like in the LA area. So I like, for instance, when I was like at a Pilates studio, I was talking to this girl while we were waiting in line for the bathroom. It turns out that she went to USC 11 years ago and was in my sorority, and we had all these crazy connections. And it was literally just like I was talking to her about like waiting in line for the bathroom. So, if you're ever waiting in line and eager to have a conversation with someone, you never know who you're going to meet. And with that, I'll let Carly continue.
That was perfect. Thank you so much, Peyton. Yeah, like networking can happen anywhere, and Handshake is such an amazing resource, especially if you're new to it and you want maybe some facilitation. A lot of the panels that the employers host have a networking section at the end where you might get paired off in a breakout room with some people if it's online, or there's like mingling time at the end if it's in person. But a lot of networking can also happen off campus, especially just because we are limited in time and space for who we can bring to campus and who's hosting events. So, kind of taking it upon yourself to network outside of USC, I think, is one of the most popular routes for students to go, especially when they're looking maybe for a referral or to learn about someone's role. Especially say there's a company you want to work for and they're just unfortunately not coming to campus anytime soon. You got to kind of have some initiative and start reaching out to people online. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and talk about. Um, so the kind of structure that we use to explain and encourage students to network with is Steve Dalton's 2-hour job search, which if you've been to any of our sessions, you're definitely familiar with this kind of formula. It's super effective, and I've used it myself ever since learning about it while working at the Career Center. So I'm kind of going to walk you guys through what it is, how to do it, and how it can help you with networking. So outside of local networking events, you may take it upon yourself to engage in informational interviews with employers, recruiters, or someone who you maybe met at an event and you want to follow up with. These are a great way to network and can lead to referrals and more knowledge about a company. So, Steve Dalton's 2-hour job search kind of tells us that the benefits of informational interviews that are off campus are you own the conversation, so it can be about whatever you want it to be. Um, it's more private, so you're not necessarily maybe competing with a bunch of other people in line at an event where you're not necessarily constrained by time. You only have a couple minutes or even seconds sometimes. You kind of get this person's time and undivided attention, which is really, really great, especially if you want to learn more about them and build a deeper connection. Um, there's an opportunity to have more tailored conversation. You can grow your network even outside of the Trojan network, which can be super helpful, especially if you're looking maybe to have a job in another city or globally elsewhere. You would have longer conversations, like I said, and helpful for companies that don't directly come to USC. So Steve Dalton's strategy kind of is broken down in 3 ways, and most of the recruitment happens during part two, which is contact. But part one is really, really important to having a successful part two. So I'm kind of going to go into explaining both. So step one to prioritize, Steve Dalton tells us to make a lamp list. And I'm going to show you guys quickly how to do that because it's super, super helpful. And this is essentially a way for you to kind of organize your thoughts and ideas regarding people and companies that you want to target. So essentially all a lamp list is just a curated list of companies that can help you narrow your job search and be strategic. Um, so you don't get lost in the sauce because that has definitely happened to me before, and having a list can really help hold yourself accountable. It can help keep you organized, and I'm going to show you guys exactly how to make one. So LAMP is just an acronym. It stands for List, Alumni, Motivation, and Posting. So not scary, don't worry. And essentially, list is exactly what it sounds like. It's the list that you start to kind of make your lamp list. And Steve Dalton kind of suggests starting with 40 target employers that you're interested in. You don't have to be married to these employers and they can totally change. But for someone who's just getting started, right now is the perfect time, especially we have summer coming up, lots of time to start recruiting, start learning, start networking. Just make a loose list of around 40 companies that you're interested in. They can be big or small. Maybe you know someone who works there. Maybe you heard about it in class. They can be like super far reaches, or it could be somewhere that feels a little bit more attainable. This is kind of just for generating ideas and seeing if there's trends in your thought process. So maybe you're in business and you're not exactly sure what you want to do, but you find yourself adding a lot of consulting firms to your lamp list. Then you kind of can get to have some direction and know where you're headed. So super helpful for kind of seeing and uncovering your interests as well. And you don't have to commit to these 40 companies. They can change as your interests and values change as well. And then next we have alumni. So once you have your target companies, what you want to go ahead and do is search for alumni that might exist within those companies because they can kind of be a helpful bridge to initiate that networking process. So I have a little picture right here that I just screenshotted from LinkedIn. You can see on LinkedIn, it does kind of show 13 school alumni work here, and it can kind of help facilitate those interactions. So using tools like LinkedIn and Handshake, you're going to go through all the companies you identified and just see if there is any USC alumni that have worked there in the past or that currently work there. This is good. It's good to take note of because it indicates a potential relationship. And like I said, someone that you kind of already have a connection with that maybe you could talk to. And then once you've identified alumni, you're going to kind of go through and rank your motivation. So essentially, all this means is that on a scale of 1 to 5, you're going to just rank how interested you are in this company. So it doesn't mean that you hate the company or you love a company. Obviously, all these companies are on your list for a reason because you are interested in them in some way. So what you're going to do is just put a 5 if you're super, super motivated. These are your ride or die companies. And then a 1 if you're interested, but it's not your favorite. So you want to kind of try to evenly distribute your 1s and 5s just so that you can kind of be more balanced within your list. And then that can help you kind of prioritize cover letters and resumes and networking efforts. So that way you can really focus on your 5s. And then you can also kind of have 1s on the back burner for when things might be getting slow or in case things don't work out with your 4s and 5s. And then the final step is to see if there's currently a job posting. So once you've kind of found your companies, you found your alumni, you figured out which ones are your favorites and which ones are not so much your favorites, you're going to go and see who's actively recruiting at the moment. So using LinkedIn, Handshake, or even the company websites, because sometimes jobs aren't posted on LinkedIn or Handshake, you're going to see if your current companies have a job posting up. And this can help you gauge whether or not they're hiring. So you want to see when the job was posted and how long it was available. For example, some jobs on LinkedIn and Handshake were posted months ago or they're reposted a long time ago. Those might be old, they might be filled. But if a job was posted super recently, that's a really great sign. It means that the firm is currently recruiting and that you should definitely start reaching out to people. So the lamp list looks kind of like this. When you put it all together, you can use Excel, you can use Google Sheets, you can make a table in Google Docs, but looks something like this. And it's a really, really great way for you to keep your thoughts organized. You can see it's organized by motivation. So all the 5s are at the top and you can start there. So this is a super helpful tool when you're going into networking because it helps you keep your thoughts organized and it helps you really prioritize those target companies so we can minimize the amount of cold emails and work that you guys have to do. So now that you have your lamp list, like I said, it serves as a tool to help you know which companies and connections to prioritize in order to land your dream job. And don't worry, this will be posted afterwards. You guys will have access to the recording and the slides on Handshake. So if you want to go back and see what that looks like, you'll be able to do that afterwards. And you can also take pictures of the screen if you want. So once you've made your lamp list, we get into step 2, which is what you guys are all here for. The most important part, the most exciting part too, is contacting, networking. So Steve Dalton kind of tells us to return to the companies that we've identified when we were making our lamp list, prioritizing the companies with alumni and job postings. And when you initiate your contact with potential people on LinkedIn or cold email, you want to start with a batch low in motivation to get practice and then move upwards as you refine your strategy and your email and your outreach. So you don't necessarily want to go in number one company right away, your first time networking. It's good to maybe start with companies that you're interested in. You maybe want to talk to them, you want to learn more, but they're not like your ride or dies. Just in case you mess up or you're a little awkward or maybe quiet, there's, nothing to worry about. Super comfortable environment for you to get comfortable speaking with people. So in the 2-hour job search, Steve Dalton does suggest that we're strategic when we're kind of selecting people that we want to contact because who you reach out to definitely does matter, because you want to make sure that you're reaching out to people that you maybe have a connection with already, who maybe went to the same school or who kind of do the same job as you. So Steve Dalton suggests to identify 2 people that you want to talk to and use LinkedIn, professional groups, panels, etc. Maybe they were a speaker, maybe your professor knows them, maybe you just randomly found them on LinkedIn, or maybe it's a family friend or a family member. Doesn't matter, just 2 people that you want to talk to, and kind of make sure that they have a good mix of the following criteria. Functionally relevant, which means that they do the same job that you want to do, or maybe they did it in the past or something similar. An alumni, they're 1 to 2 levels above where you would start, or they recently had a promotion from where you would want to start. So they don't have to meet all these criteria, but having some of these criteria will help kind of guide you to a successful networking conversation where you can learn from them. And then the different ways that you can go about contacting these people. Obviously, the possibilities kind of are endless, especially if they were a guest speaker, if you know them personally, that might be a little bit different. But if you don't necessarily know this person and you just heard about them or you saw them online, the number one kind of suggested route is LinkedIn Messenger, according to Steve Dalton, which I've used so many times. It's been successful for me. It's not always successful because sometimes people, when they're higher up in their careers or when they're really busy, don't always check their LinkedIn the same way that we do as students. But I guarantee if you stay committed to the process, you will get responses on LinkedIn. You can also do Google stalking, also known as fan mail, which is where you find someone and then you kind of look up like what the email format is for their company and you just kind of give it a go and see if it sends. Sometimes Google will know the email format, sometimes they don't. So this is kind of just trying different emails that might be this person's work email and seeing if the email goes through or not. I've tried this a few times and it has worked, I think, once or twice. So it's not a bad option, especially if you can't find them on LinkedIn or if they're not active on LinkedIn. And then you can also LinkedIn invite people. So if you don't want to message them, or if you are not premium and you can't message them without being connected, or you're not already connected with them, you can send them an invite or like a friend request, and you can attach a really short message along with that invite. This is a little bit less effective than LinkedIn Messenger because I think you only get like 200 characters, which is literally just enough space to say like, "Hi, my name's Carly. I'm from USC. I would love to chat with you." You don't really have the space to say, "Hi, my name's Carly. I'm a business student at USC. I'm really interested in learning about your career path, specifically this role. I would love to chat if you have time." So it's a little bit less personal to do LinkedIn invite, but it still has been effective for me. And it's a good way to get more connections on LinkedIn as well, even if the person doesn't see your message, to still connect with them and then be able to maybe message them later. And then the last kind of category is secondary connections, which is someone that one of your friends or family members, they know. So it's not someone that you directly know, like say a cousin or a friend. It's a friend of a friend. So those can be effective as well. Kind of like a little bit more of a guarantee, but those are a little bit harder to find, especially if you're kind of looking for something niche, or maybe your family friends, your parents don't work in the same industry that you're interested in going into. So those are your options. And now, how do we actually contact these people? So, once you've kind of identified your people and the way that you want to contact them, the hardest part is crafting that perfect message and kind of getting a good response from them and initiating that conversation. So, Steve Dalton says it's really important not to sell yourself. One of the keys to networking is being authentic, being open to learning, and letting, this person kind of take the lead in helping you and telling you about their story, and you being in the position to learn and take advice from them. So don't be afraid to ask for help. Honesty is the best policy, and then ask for a conversation. When I'm networking with people, I find that it's best to kind of be honest and say what you need help with. For example, I just reached out to a recruiter on LinkedIn at a company in a different city, and for the life of me, I could not find a recruiter in the specific department that I was looking for, but I wanted to reach out to someone anyways, just to learn more about company culture. And he just asked me, he was like, so like, I don't recruit in this department, but what can I help you with? And I was like, you know what? I would love to get in contact with someone in this department. So not being afraid to ask for help, and just being open and honest about, what you need, because at the end of the day, people really do want to help. So kind of crafting messages to send out to people. Um, there is kind of like a little happy medium between, too short, too long, just the right amount of information. So Steve Dalton kind of shares the 6-point email rule, which is brief, human, subtle, direct, and egoless. So you want it to be brief, short. You want to have a human connection, emphasizing, personality, not trying to sell yourself. Um, being subtle, but also direct, not being too forward and being like, hey, I want a referral, but I don't even know you yet. Just being like, hey, I have some questions. I'd love to talk to you, but making that very clear. And then also being egoless. You don't want to list all your qualifications and criteria, because that's what you want to have a conversation about. So here's kind of a little example on the left. I think this is a really, really good one to go from. I have modeled this email so many times, and I think it's kind of like the really, really good example of leaning into the connection and the directness, but also being super subtle and brief. So as you can see, the student is reaching out to a fellow Duke MBA seeking insight. So this is kind of a good email to follow, maybe if you're reaching out to someone who also went to USC. And she says, hi, Jeff. I'm Becca, a fellow Duke MBA class of 18. May I chat with you for a few minutes about your product management experience at Red Hat? I'm trying to learn more about product management in the North Carolina tech space, so your insights would be greatly appreciated. Best regards, Becca. This is a fantastic email. It's short, sweet, to the point, and you guys can kind of mold this and craft this anyway. Even if maybe you're trying to connect with someone who didn't necessarily go to the same school as you can omit that and add something else. Maybe you guys have something else in common. But regardless, just to kind of show what it should look like, there's an example. Here is kind of another option. It's a little bit longer, it's a little bit different. Another MBA example, but industry doesn't matter for this. These kind of initial contacts are very, very similar. This would kind of be an example of maybe someone was a guest speaker, or if your professor knew them, or maybe you have a secondary connection. You can see it says my career advisor referred me to you. Another fantastic example. And then for the timeline of sending out these messages, I know it can get really frustrating to maybe not have responses. So this is kind of the calendar layout that Steve Dalton suggests. First contact on a Monday, and if they don't respond, your second try on a Thursday. Or if they don't respond, you try your second contact on that Thursday, and then that following Wednesday, you try that first contact again. So you're giving this person kind of a week and a half. And then the cycle would then just continue where, every few days you're initiating a new contact at a different company. And then if they don't respond, you're following up, here 6 calendar days later. So if you want to, maybe speed it up a little bit, don't be too bothersome. I wouldn't follow up the next day necessarily if this person hasn't responded, but you could also follow up maybe at the end of the week if you wanted as well, or if the job is a little bit more urgent. And also if you wanted to try multiple contacts in one day, you can do that as well. And then here again, it's just kind of emphasizing those values when networking. You don't want to sell yourself. You want to be likable. Likability is driven by how well you listen, not how well you speak. So really emphasizing those subtle, direct themes in order to be human and get the most out of these conversations. So step 3 technically would be to recruit. So maybe say you've had some successful networking, you've talked to some people, you're officially ready to apply for the job. Maybe you got a referral out of it, or sometimes even when you're networking with someone, they will pass along your application for you. That has happened to me before. So step 3 would be to recruit, which would involve you submitting, your resume and your cover letter and all those other documents, which we're not going to go over in this session. But there are industry-specific recruitment guides under the Career Center tab on Handshake if you guys are interested in those. So now I'm going to pass it back to Peyton, who's going to talk about nailing the conversation.
Hi, sorry guys. Yeah, so in terms of nailing the conversation, we can just get right into it. So yeah, there's different types of questions that you can ask the interviewer or the person that you're going to be networking with. And we've kind of made it into 4 different categories. So there's background questions, experience questions, industry and firm specific questions, and then career advice questions. So I would say that like career advice questions and experience and background are more vague, in terms of just the questions in general. Like you're asking just for like career advice. So like let's say for me, it's like I'm interested in the field of education and I'm talking to someone who it was a teacher and or something like that. So, and I'm asking them about just about their experience being a teacher, not necessarily like why they didn't like a certain school or something like that. And that kind of ties in with the experience questions. You can get probably a little bit more specific, like asking them about like individual experiences, kind of like on the job kind of experiences and whatnot. Background questions, I would say, are more tailored to like what they did, maybe like what their degree was and like how they got to where they are in their career. And then the more specific kind of questions are the industry and firm specific questions. So that's asking the person like why or why not do you like, not like this company, or as Carly was talking about previously, the culture of, the firm or the culture of the specific team that they work on and things like that. So these are all questions to keep in mind, and to start thinking about when networking. All right, so here we have some examples of questions to ask when networking. So this presentation will be posted, I believe, on Handshake afterwards if you want to revert back, or if you want to take a photo on your phone, write one down really fast that sticks out to you. But yeah, these are some great questions to keep in mind and just have in your back pocket, in terms of networking. So I will give you guys a second to take a look at these. I'm not going to read them all out loud because, yeah, but yeah, we can move on. All right, so these are what we kind of discussed as being the best networking questions. One, how did you begin your career? I think this kind of just like sets it right off the bat. I think a lot of the times people, especially in college, are really scared to begin their career. They don't really know what, but I also think that it doesn't necessarily, it kind of shows you sometimes the answer to this question for a lot of people you won't realize is a direct link to where they are now. Maybe a CEO of a company started off working in the mailroom of the place or something like that. So I think that that's a really interesting question, and you can get a lot of information, and it can kind of give you a sense of like, you don't necessarily need to start at a big 4 company to get to be, where you want to be. The second best networking question would be if you think about a newly hired employee that you enjoyed working with, what are some of the characteristics that come to mind? This is a great question because it kind of gives you a sense of like, are you a good fit? What are they looking for? And if you want to kind of tailor yourself to be a good fit, you can also do that by getting an answer to this question. Um, but it kind of frames it in like a way that, it's not asking directly like that. And then the third question, after this discussion, do you have any recommendations of who I should talk to next? So this is kind of like, maybe if they don't think that your career path or your path is correct and they can revert you to another person that they work with or something else because of whatever reason that might be. Or maybe they have someone in mind that is perfect for you to talk to and can help you get up set up for an interview for an internship or for a job or something like that. So I think that these are three really, really valuable questions that you guys should also keep in mind when networking. Um, yeah, so other discussion topics that can be had in terms of networking would be their personal career journey. I love to hear about other people's career journey. Some people don't like that. I do, just because I think I can just gain a lot from other people's personal experiences. So I really like that. Biggest lessons learned just in terms of someone else's experience. That's another good discussion topic. Career changes and pivots, like why someone left a certain career and started something new. Maybe it was because they started a family, or maybe it was because the market crashed. So those are also good questions to ask. Transitioning from school to work, I think as college students, it's a big change. I know as me and Carly are both seniors, like thinking about going from school to work is definitely on our mind. So that's definitely a big discussion topic for people like us. Making the most of an internship or job. Yeah, I think that that's a great, I think everyone is very motivated to get internships, but like they don't sometimes even know the reason why. It kind of just they think that if they have one that they're going to get a job after that. That's simply not the case. So kind of just talking about why that internship would be valuable to in the future have a career or whatever. And then kind of just this ties into like a personal career journey, but like similarities with the person and their major past experiences in schools. I personally know like a lot of people in my family were able to kind of get their jobs and start their careers because of connections that they had with people and not connections like, oh, they knew someone. It was they were went to the same university as someone, but they were a few years younger, so they kind of just bonded over things that they had in common with them. And I think that that's like such a beautiful concept in a way because, people that share similar experiences bond, and that's kind of just makes people, and then, like people have the same boss for several years because they make a connection with them. So I think that's really awesome. Okay, and we're getting to the end of this. Want to do question and answer, but following up, this is probably one of the most important things. And I've talked to several different like employers and people, my mentors in charge of me and like my internships and whatnot. They honestly told me a lot of the time the reason that I was kind of got chosen for the role is my follow-ups were pretty good. So I would definitely make sure to whenever you talk to someone, whether it's just, a simple coffee chat or networking thing, just get their, if you just got their number, or if it was an interview or whatever it might be, definitely send them an email. So these are some examples of ways in which that you can follow up with them, be very brief, but also, thanking them for their time and their efforts to communicate with you. Yeah, so just remember while your larger goal is landing a job, your shorter goal should be to initiate and grow that know, like, trust component, so critical to hiring decisions. And with that, we'll, I think, get into the Q&A, right, Carly?
Yes. So we just have some takeaways from today, which are be confident, but stay true to yourself and don't be afraid to explore your interests. Don't sell yourself. Try to have open and honest conversations, and then lean on your lamp list so that way you can stay organized and strategic. So I hope you guys found something helpful from this presentation, and remember that it will be posted on Handshake so you guys can see it all. You have access to that lamp list layout and stuff. But if anyone has any questions at this point, you can feel free to turn yourself off mute, raise your hand, and we would be happy to answer. We'll be here till 7. So yeah, thank you guys so much for coming.
I have a question.
Mhm.
So I know, are do you recommend, for example, if you're looking, for referrals or things like that for jobs and stuff, do you recommend, uh, reaching out before or after you apply for the position?
Honestly, I have done both. It mostly depended on when the job was posted. If I was kind of planning in advance, I think I would start networking before. But sometimes, I've seen a job that I really wanted and it was just posted, and I wanted to make sure that I got my application in kind of before a lot of other people did. So then I would kind of network after the fact. So I think it kind of just depends on your strategy and your plan. I would say if you are looking for jobs or internships for next summer, I would start networking now, even if there is no job posting. But if you're looking for kind of immediate roles, if you see something posted, definitely apply and you can kind of follow up later. And then you can kind of start your message the opposite way and be like, hey, I just applied for this role. I notice that you did this. I would love to chat more to learn more about it, to better understand maybe the recruitment process or how my skills fit. I just did that literally 2 days ago. So I think it just kind of depends on your timeline. But I would say if you're super proactive and thinking really far ahead, start networking now. But if you see a job and you want to apply for it, definitely apply for it because I know that the job posting timeline definitely does matter. A lot of those jobs do fill up quick. So I wouldn't wait too long. Um, yeah, that's my best advice.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I have a quick question about LinkedIn specifically.
hmm
So I know with premium, don't you get like only 5 IMs with people you're not connected with? Um, or something like that. How do you suggest like prioritizing who I sent those to? And then additionally, how useful is it to just send messages without the connections, like those short messages?
Um, I honestly think that those short messages, because ultimately it's in the hands of the person whether or not they accept your connection or not. So I think the short messages can be super beneficial, but sometimes people just aren't active on LinkedIn, so they won't see it regardless. Um, so I'd say, always to send a quick message when you're going to connect with someone, even if it's super short. I always just say, hi, like, I'm Carly, I'm a senior at USC, like, looking forward to connecting, just to have something. I don't have LinkedIn Premium, so I can't speak to the certain amount of messages to people you're not connected with per month. But I definitely say kind of
So have
leaning
you
on,
only been able to send messages to people who you are connected with? And if you're not, do you just go for emails and things like that?
oh, even if I'm not connected with someone and I want to message with them, I will send a connection request. Um, So there's been a lot of times where maybe a recruiter, someone who I'm interested in talking to, I'm not connected with them, but because they don't have premium, I can't message them without being connected. So I just send a connection request regardless. And usually eventually they will accept my request and then you can either follow up with a like a longer message or they'll respond to that short message. But I would just say prioritize it based on your lamp list, and based on kind of like when you're hoping to recruit. So if there's a job that you want, that's kind of posted now, I would go ahead and use your, you know, messages per month on that job, um, and kind of just prioritize it like that.
And then even I think the connections messages are also limited. Would you suggest like waiting to send one with a message or just clicking connect anyway?
Um, I would just connect anyway because then when they accept your request to connect, you can send them a longer message. And usually, like recruiters, because that is their job to kind of connect with students and learn about the talent, they will accept your request pretty fast. I would say if someone doesn't accept your request for a connection, it's probably just because they're not active. So they wouldn't have seen that message regardless. So I would go ahead and connect anyways, especially if you're kind of on a time crunch.
Are there any common mistakes that you guys see people making while networking?
Common mistakes.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know if this is really a mistake, but I think some people think that it has to be formal. Um, so I think that that is more just like a hesitation situation where people tend to hesitate when networking because they're scared, or like kind of scared of rejection or whatnot. But I think that even if you talk to someone and then nothing comes of it, you don't that never that shouldn't stop you in a way from networking, because also like it doesn't mean that in the future they don't, maybe they have a conversation with you and then they think about, wait, I know someone who, they should connect with, and a lot of times they'll send them to you and then can lead to something for you in the future. So I don't really think that there's a wrong way to network or, mistakes in networking. I mean, maybe a mistake would just be if you like over harass someone cold emailing them and they're not answering you or something like that. I think that's just more of a kind of don't do that. If they don't answer you after like a few messages, maybe just stop. But yeah, I think that the only thing I would say is just hesitating when networking.
You're like anything that you'd say is makes networking more or less effective for some people, or
I would say it's more effective when you have questions like prepared for them, and you know what you're going to talk to them about, but it depends on how um kind of rigid you want the conversation to be or not. If you're just kind of getting, again, like advice about experience, then that's more casual and, but if you want to work at their company and have their role in the future, then you should, be prepared to ask them about things like that. And yeah.
all right. Thank you.
I see someone has their hand raised. You can unmute.
Hi, I have two questions. So my first question is about finding emails. So I try to like just Google the person's name and all I find is like their LinkedIn. I can't find their email. I know not a lot of people are always on LinkedIn. I was wondering like what advice you have on like finding somebody's email.
I'm sure Carly has some advice, but my advice would be that sometimes like um if you like find the company or the organization that they work for's website, it will have like, their a picture of them maybe and their name and their job title and then maybe contact info. That's in the past how I found people's emails when it's not present on LinkedIn or something like that. I don't know if Carly has any other advice regarding that.
Yeah, I usually don't go that route, but the times that I have, if you can't find them on the website, what you can always do is go to that company's website. And even if you can't find that person, you might find like a sales rep, or I mean, depending on what the company is, or a point of contact that will have like the company email. So that way you can see the format that the email is in. So, say you're able to find maybe like the company sales rep on the website, and even if that's not the person you want to talk to, it'll say maybe like first name, last name at pwc.com. Then you know, okay, so like that's the format. It's first name, last name, or first initial last name, or first name dot last name, and then you can put the person's name who you're trying to connect with to in that format and send an email that way. I've been able to do this a few times. Sometimes it works, sometimes I get the email returned. Because sometimes when companies are so big, for example, if people have like common last names or common first names, they might have to add numbers and stuff. So like the company I work for, it's just first initial last name, but because some people have common last names and there's maybe too many like A Smiths, then it'll be like A Smith one or A Smith something else. So for big companies, that might be a little bit less effective, but that's what I've done and it's worked sometimes. Also, sometimes you can just look up online like blank company email format and it will like give you some common email formats to try. And sometimes your message might get returned back to you, but if it doesn't get returned back to you, it went to someone, and you might get a response that way. So that's my best advice for that. It is tricky though.
Yeah, that's good advice. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And my second question is like I came in a little bit late. Was there a QR code or any way to check in?
We did not have a QR code because it was online, but Yeah, I don't think we did have a QR code
Okay.
today. Usually in person we do, but I don't think we did today.
I have a question, if you don't mind.
Yeah, of course.
So over the weekend, I met the principal engineer at a company that I really want to work at, and I gave him my resume, and he gave me his LinkedIn information. How do I go about like reaching out and like asking about a job that he mentioned without sounding too like, I don't know, too like not friendly?
Um, let me go back to one of our examples. I feel like we might have had a good example for that. Let's see. Oh, this is the following up. I feel like this um this one might be kind of a good message to model because they kind of have a little connection in this already, and you said you met him. So I think maybe you could kind of reach out to him in a similar way, kind of do a brief intro to maybe remind him of who you are in the context of you guys meeting. Be like, it was so nice to meet you at this event. Thank you so much for taking my resume and for providing me with your LinkedIn information. You know, maybe if you guys spoke about something, you can mention that. Be like, I found our conversation about blank to be super informative. Um, would you be open to an informational interview? I'd love to learn more about your experiences and also learn more about the job that he referenced. So I think kind of using this as a little bit of a model and then kind of referencing the conversation you had while also kind of inquiring further about the job that he mentioned to kind of, make it personal, but also, like the advice said, to be direct. I think this would be a good email to model.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Could you very quickly go to the lamp slide, specifically the letter L?
Yes. Let's go
Thank
back
you.
there. Of course. All right, there you go.
Okay, I just wanted to take a picture.
Yeah, of course. And we'll make this whole presentation available to you guys. So definitely take all the pictures you want, and then you'll be able to access it later as well. All right. If nobody has any more questions, we will wrap it up. But also, if anyone does have questions and you maybe don't want to, raise your hand or you're a little bit shy, you can 100% email both me or Peyton. And then we also do have advising hours through the Career Center if you guys want to practice networking or want kind of peer-to-peer guidance. We are available through the Career Center as well. Peyton just put her email, and then I will plug mine as well. Um, so yeah, you guys can follow up with any questions, and we would be happy to answer them. And Peyton focuses on education, nonprofit, and social justice, and I do finance, consulting, and accounting. But we also do have other interns as well who focus on other industries. And if you go to the Career Center page, you'll be able to see their information as well. Thank you so much, guys.
Thanks, guys. Have a great evening.
Thank you so much. Have a good night.
You too. Okay, perfect, Lauren. I'll send you those stats.
Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Carly. Appreciate it. Hope you have a
course.
great rest of your night and congrats. Last presentation. Does it feel surreal?
I know it does. It feels good. I'm glad that we were able to get this one in.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I know that Peyton has the trek next week,
Mhm.
and then